I always knew they couldn't make the books scene by scene as written. We'd have had 12-hour-long films.
I do think we deliver on the spectacle, but I think we always tried to make sure there was a heartbeat beating underneath that, because what matters most to Joe and to me is that it's emotionally true.
Steve really got the books, he also got me. So this was collaborative and one of the best experiences of my life. So we met for the first time in 99,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Can you remember that?
Yeah, I remember it, you know, pretty explicitly, because it was, I had some nerves in meeting you because I thought, you know, that I was the Yank that you thought was going to destroy your baby.
Correct,
and
that's exactly what I thought, yeah.
And I was very keen on, in some ways, trying to communicate that to you. And I thought the best way was, you know, to somehow have someone tell you, you know, to take a look at my previous work, and I clearly wasn't going to pander to an audience. But I remember being very impressed by you, seriously, that you...
I was terrified. I cannot believe that I could have impressed anyone on that occasion. I was terrified.
Well, you were weirdly prescient about the movie business, which shocked me.
I was really wary, that's the truth of it. But meeting you was a massive relief.
That's good to hear.
Well, you know this. You were making me laugh. I still hadn't melted completely, though.
Yeah, well, I know the moment.
And then you said to me, you know who my favourite character is.
Yeah, and that just was spontaneous. And I realized I don't think I'd ever acknowledged it even to myself. I remember very specifically leaning over to you and saying, I think I need to tell you that Harry's not my favorite character.
Which was fine.
And I didn't know what you thought. I later learned that you thought that I was going to say...
I thought you said, you know who my favourite character is? And I thought, oh, you're just going to say Ron.
Yeah.
And I love Ron. But Ron's so easy to love.
He's so easy to love.
You know, everyone loves it. Who couldn't love Ron? And I thought, okay, you love Ron.
And then
and then you said...
Hermione. And it was true, because Hermione was the character that... And it stayed throughout, because I think she had such... this huge intelligence, but it was really a kind of exasperating, frustrating character in a way, though. It was like the girl that bothered you in school,
yeah,
but you couldn't stop thinking about her. So
not always the easiest to like.
No, but I liked that about her. That's what I liked about her.
Yeah, I know, but that you can see how that allayed a lot of fears, because she wasn't the most obvious character, perhaps, for a person to like, or say was their favourite character, and also for a man to like her best was arguably unusual.
You've got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know? Just there.
But the thing I liked about all the characters was that they were misfits, and almost no more than she. And because she had no pedigree at all to be there.
No.
And I thought I certainly, you know, Hollywood is that way, is that there's no...
I was just going to say, exactly like me sitting at that lunch. Who would have forecast?
There's no entrance exam. So you're just there, and you, like you say, I'm here and I'm here to work. And you were very direct. You were very respectful, but you were very direct, and I thought this is a good thing, and I thought it was going to be good for us, because I think there are a lot of writers of books who are just happy to have a deal with Hollywood. And by the way, I understand, I think it was Jane Smiley or someone who just said, you have my book, now I'm leaving because I can't watch this. It was someone like that. And I think that's one way to deal with it.
It is one way to deal with it.
You clearly were not going to be that way, but you also were respectful of everyone, but I think you weren't just going to sit there and let someone say something foolish. People have forgotten this. There were still people talking about, could we cast an American and stuff.
Definitely, at that point, definitely.
And I was violently against that, and you were as well. That Ron, for some reason, was the one they thought
everyone
could
thought
be
Ron should
American.
Be American.
I don't know why.
How was that going to work? And I think that there was a feeling that Harry needed to be a little more Ron-like.
Yes.
I remember that coming up a few times. Let's make Harry more of a wisecracker. And you said, early on, Harry is our eyes onto the world. That's his function. His primary function is as the observer, which was perfect, which is exactly as it is in the books. Initially, you see the magical world through the eyes of a kid who has zero knowledge.
Welcome, Harry, to Diagon Alley.
So that's how you enter the
Well, and that's
how you go through
precisely how the
rabbit
scripts
hole.
were in the beginning, all from Harry's point of view for a very, very long time. Exactly. And what I thought you had done brilliantly was balanced it. And one of the things I tried to say to people was, Ron and Hermione are so obviously colorful, interesting characters. And Harry's a bit of a blank slate.
He is.
I'm just Harry. Just Harry.
Well, just Harry. Did you ever make anything happen?
I think that's why different cultures are able to project onto him what they want him to be. And I think it's why I've always respected Dan enormously, because he's the hardest character for me to write.
Totally agree. And
Is he the hardest character for you? Was he the hardest character for you to write in terms of?
No, but it's the archetype of the hero, isn't it? The hero so often is. It's like the Galahad figure, isn't it? The guy without the quirks. The guy who simply he's the vessel. He's the vessel. Dan is the vessel.
Yeah.
And the hardest to play by a mile. And Dan's just done a magnificent job with it. And I'm glad to see he latterly has got more credit for that, because
Well, I also think
he's done a great job.
In the last picture in particular, I think Dan's been brilliant all throughout, but he's so good in the last movie.
Yeah, he's stunning.
And it's honestly, it's in the
Completely
silent moments.
Yeah.
I mean, where he's just, you see on his face the price that he's paid
Exactly.
for all these years, and he's really brilliant. But to convey that was more difficult in his case.
Well, I think that was always something I felt you had a harder job than I did. Because inevitably, film being the visual medium it is, so much of what I could do with Harry was have an internal soliloquy. I could show Harry's inner musings. I could take the reader into Harry's internal space and show them around. This character whose life is maybe 80% internal, you're forced to show us that externally. So I always felt that you had a much rougher job than I did when it came to Harry the character.
You were talking about trying to dramatize that internal life. When I first started writing the script, when he was in the cupboard, I invented a spider named Alistair who he talked to, and he used to sort of nick broken soldiers out of the rubbish bin, and he lined them up on the shelf, and this broken army that Dudley had thrown out.
It's just such a great image, the broken army.
And he used to talk to them, and what the point was that he seemed slightly mad when I wrote the first draft. And then when Hagrid appeared, you thought he was out of his imagination for a minute, that he had summoned this guy.
I think that's a fabulous point, and that speaks so perfectly to the truth of the books, because I've had it suggested to me more than once that Harry actually did go mad in the cupboard,
and
that everything that happened subsequently is some sort of fantasy life he developed to save himself.
Well, no, and that's where it came from. It came from the book. I mean, because when you read the book, you make it pretty clear that he's an abused boy.
Totally.
And
of course he is, yeah.
And so there's darkness there, and I would go with that to a point. So that's how I wrote it. But then what happened was, when I was writing it, I always dreamed about Potter.
I dreamt about it just the other night.
Well, see, I was saying one of the things I miss is I haven't dreamed about it in a while. And the one thing I really, really, really miss is writing those three characters, because
me too.
I love
had
it so much.
shorthand. Harry, Ron, and Hermione in all my handwritten manuscripts is HRH, which also, of course, stands for Her Royal Highness. But that's and I miss just dashing off HRH. It's just so many times those three characters.
Well, I know in the description,
I remember thinking you will never do that again.
I just wrote the trio.
The trio. You did. That's right. It always all
the
through
trio,
the
because I didn't want. I felt bad always giving Harry the lead, because I thought it was more complicated than that. Because you can fall into this Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Harry, Ron, and Hermione. So I would often just say the trio. Or if I felt Hermione was psychologically leading a scene in the script, I would say Hermione trailed by Ron and Harry. And same with Ron. Ron grew much stronger in the scripts the last three movies, because I realized him being
late maturer emotionally.
Well, because he was under oppression of his brother's success, and so
and then he has to make best friends with the most famous boy in wizarddom.
But his family and him being from a wizard family gives him an edge over both Harry and Hermione at a certain point, and his instincts are sharper than theirs.
Yes.
So he became a really wonderful character to write, and Rupert's so brilliant at playing him. I think he's so underestimated, Rupert, how he plays that character.
He's a genius.
Dad, what's that for? It's no joke. I'm in love with her.
All right, fine, you're in love with her. Have you ever actually met her?
No. Can you introduce me?
And I don't think Rupert ever felt the slightest bit of angst. He just walked onto set, it seems to me. I mean, that's true genius, isn't it? Knocked it out brilliantly, went back to his dressing room and played darts for a bit.
He dramatizes it in a way that's just so human. He's so real.
Totally. And then
he's not a clown ever, and that's what I like about him.
Never a clown, but then it turns out he can play drama brilliantly as well.
Oh, he's great.
All the darkness that suddenly erupted out of him was phenomenal. No, I love Rupert. I think he's amazing.
Yeah, I'm still here. But you two carry on. Don't let me spoil the fun.
We should talk about the emailing, because, I mean, that's how we worked.
Well, there was some of it was time difference. You also were...
Yeah, we were 12 hours apart.
And we're writers, so it was a bit like
writers.
having letters back and forth, but just faster. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was just simply, I didn't know how it would work. Looking back, within the last few months, I realized that in a way, writing this was a bit like being Bob Woodward and All the President's Men, and instead of meeting in a garage, I would meet deep throat in cyberspace, which was you, and I'd say, and you would say, instead of follow the money, you would say sort of follow the character. And it was like that. You would say, follow the character, it'll lead you there.
Yeah, well, for me, character is everything.
Well, me too.
Everything.
But I remember we had that was the emailing thing was, like it was very easy to email you. And I once asked her, I think, about Ron's uncle. I said, can you tell me a little bit, because I've got to reference him in dialogue. And I got back like 5 pages about Ron's uncle, and you don't put none of it's in the book.
About that.
No, it's fascinating. I thought, oh my God. I mean, this is like, what do you not know about this world? Because I always said the thing about Dragon's Blood. I asked you, because I thought, all writers have done this, is say, there's 10 uses for cooking oil. They have no idea what the 10 uses are. They just think it's a cool thing to write. So I email you, like, what are the uses for Dragon's Blood? Literally, 20 seconds later, oven cleaner. I mean, it's like all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, you know, you really know. So it was. What was great about that, though, for me was that, it was weird, because in a weird way that confirmed whether I was going right or wrong. And it was, you often would say, no, you're right, you're fine. And then, but there was that all the President's Men thing. You would just nudge me. Dobby was one of the big ones, but.
Yes. Yeah, Dobby. Now, you like Dobby, don't you?
No, I mean, what happened with Dobby was quite the opposite. That was an example where, I don't want to get off the email thing, but that was an example where the films affected me, because, and I don't hold this against anybody. When I saw Dobby realized on screen the first time, I was not happy.
That's interesting.
And I thought, this is not good enough. It looks fake. I said, so when he came back for Goblet, first draft, I put him in the shadows. He was literally underneath the Great Hall. I mean, you never saw him. And you said, I remember you like, this is all fine, except that you.
Why is Dobby under a cushion?
Yeah, because he might be significant. I remember you saying, typical understatement. It's possible he will play a significant part.
Yeah, I remember.
So I brought him back, and then now it shows when the guys are given the tools as they were the final time around, what they can do with him, and because now I can't even imagine leaving Dobby out.
Dobby has no master. Dobby is a free elf, and Dobby has come to save Harry Potter and his friends.
But that was an example where the movies affected me. But I don't know what I would have done if I had not known you were there, because I think not knowing where this thing was going to go.
I cannot think of an occasion when you got it wrong, except for the Dumbledore, the beautiful girl.
Yeah, but the odd thing about that, I will tell you, and I don't think I've ever told you this, it did not surprise me when you told me he was gay.
No, you were remarkably unperturbed.
But because I thought, this is me though, and this is a real defect in me, I never felt that line needed to be interpreted as romantic.
Writers, this is a real defect in me. Now, what?
No, but I mean, that line I wrote, I thought could be a platonic line, even though it was about the color of her hair and stuff, and I understood, but you were quite right in the sense that most people would interpret it as romantic, and so it had to go. But it was, when I wrote it, I remember thinking, is this right for him? But I thought, the great thing about Dumbledore was how free he was, which is that he would look at anybody in this room, male or female, and he would say, I like your belt buckle. And that's what I loved about him. And he was so much fun to write.
Horace, do you mind if I take this? I do love knitting patterns.
What was great about writing him was the burden you realized that he was carrying from the beginning. And to be able to write that and kind of let it out in moments, because he's so much the sort of soul of it in a way, isn't he?
He is.
Should I tell you to hide, you hide. Should I tell you to run, you run. Should I tell you to abandon me and save yourself, you must do so.
He's the character I miss most. I found him...
Was he the hardest one to kill?
Well, I always knew that he was going then,
So you were prepared?
It was horrible killing him. Not, I mean, you know, as a writer, it's not the way I think a lot of non-writers think you would feel. You're very clinical when you do it, aren't you? You have to be. It's the old chip of ice in the heart thing. You've got to get it right. You're very dispassionate. You're the director.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, I'll never write him again. And although I knew I would write him again in flashback and so forth, it wasn't the same.
It's funny, there's real power in that King's Cross scene, and I feel it's also very good.
There is, and I love it. But
I stopped in the book at that point.
Did you?
Yeah, because I thought,
Did you feel how much lighter he was?
It was dizzying because you have one great moment, which was.
I think if you so desired, you'll be able to board a train.
And where would it take me?
On.
I thought so brilliant. You know, it's just like.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, it's all brilliant. You know, it's that, but it's just.
What I like about that scene, and you really got it in the script, Dumbledore's lighter. Then, isn't he? You get this sense
this
that
is your party. He says something like that.
Exactly. This is your party. He's freer. He's free. He's played his part. He knows he's done it properly. He knows he's brought Harry where he needs to go. He's free, which was very, very rarely get with Dumbledore throughout all 7 books. He very rarely makes, although as you say, he is free about other people.
No, but it's interesting you mentioned.
He's intensely reserved about himself.
Very.
And it's always done with humour and flippancy if he talks about himself.
Well, that's what's brilliant about the Aberforth thing, which is that he says, "Do you really know my brother?"
Yeah. Well.
Did he ever mention me? Did he ever mention
exactly.
And Harry's sort of.
Yeah, now you mention it.
Because I actually wrote a moment in the scene with Aberforth before they enter Hogwarts Castle, where Aberforth keeps pushing Harry's buttons, and he says, "Why do you believe my brother? Why do you believe in my brother?" And he says, "Because I have to."
Well, yeah.
He screams at him because I have to. Because if I don't know who I am. And what you realize is that in a way Dumbledore had molded him.
Yeah.
And so, but I think everyone was sort of uncomfortable with that except me. But it's a measure of the dimension of the characters.
I think you and I are crueler.
Crueler, yes. Oh yeah, especially I think emotionally.
We're very similar in that we were more comfortable with coldness, I suppose, a certain coldness.
Yeah.
But some people do find that very unattractive. My own sister. There were times in reading the novels, I remember when Hagrid goes underground after it's discovered he's and this is in the parlance of the book, not mine, a half-breed, effectively. Yeah. And she said to me, "Why didn't Dumbledore go down sooner? Why didn't he go and see him?" And I said, "Well, you've got to back off, let people learn their own lessons sometimes. He's so detached, he's like you."
Well, there you go. But I think it's why it's odd. I think it's why children respond so.
That's
and I think so when they read these books,
true, yeah.
it seemed it had more than a little whiff of reality. I think they know the world's a hard place, children. Yeah.
But childhood is the reverse of warm and fuzzy. My childhood wasn't warm and fuzzy. The playground is a brutal place.
No one asked your opinion, you filthy little mudblood.
It is Lord of the Flies. The playground is Lord of the Flies.
So many Potter readers I've had this conversation with. So many of them saying it gets better.
It's really true.
The adult world is much kinder.
Well, what people don't realize is that a lot of people, I think, as you said, your life story became more Dickensian with each passing years. The books became more successful. You suddenly you were a streetwalker, you were a heroin addict. I mean, but the truth is you did not have it easy, and it is a remarkable story. And you were writing them in coffee shops, and you were imagining them on trains. And there are young people like that who are feeling that things are not going their way, and what they can do is they can sort of come out of it, and you've proven that. I mean, and I think the characters in Potter, what always sustained to me the books was that they're really rich and they feel real, and the dimension of them is extraordinary. But not knowing where this thing was going to go was unnerving. At the other end, but it was. It's funny, I actually sort of enjoyed chasing the end. And I think it was easier to do because what you said earlier, which was that I always felt your primary concern is character.
Completely.
And things like, it's not what talents you possess, it's what you do with them. And those are the notes you're trying to strike.
You got that really, really early on because I remember you saying to me, maybe around about the time of Azkaban, the magic's fun. You've got to strip that out of the way. The reason that people like the books is the characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's completely
I think the best audience for
true.
both the books and the films are, and look, by the way, going back to the first day we met, this was the moment that stunned me. I remember you saying, She said, I know the movies can't be the books. And I said, really? And you go, because I know what's coming. And she says, you're not going to be able to do it. Because you were really sort of doing Goblet of Fire at that point.
Yeah.
And you said, it's not going to be possible without the movies being 8 hours long. And I thought it was so prescient. And
I forgot I said that.
And then you said something very specific. You said, look, all I ask is that you be true to the characters.
Yeah.
And
I remember saying that, yeah.
And I think the thing what happened for me was, and it was not anything that you did, it's what the world did, which was that what happened was what brilliant text became sacred text. And I think...
Which is not an easy position to be in.
No, because Alistair was gone, and for the most part the Broken Soldiers were gone. And it also was because when Chris came in, and I understand Chris wanted to have great fidelity to the text, and it came out of enthusiasm. But it was harder than to improvise. And I'm not saying that was the wrong decision. I'm just saying that I think by the time that Alfonso came along, we had to. We had to change a little bit because we couldn't do it.
As time went on, people had more confidence. I think that as the series went on, though, I think that you were given more latitude to improvise, as you say, and I think that was great for the films.
Well, you would always encourage it, though. You would always say...
This is the irony. Everyone always assumes I would say, don't change a word! But actually, quite the reverse. I used to say, yeah, change it.
Well, I was saying before we started this to someone that either people think you were standing there like a taskmaster or that you weren't involved at all. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, you were always my greatest... I drifted in
and out like a ghost.
Well, I could have used you even more, but you were always just my greatest ally.
I know perfectly well there were things that were very losable in Goblet and Phoenix if you weren't going to make the 8-hour movie. I mean, as it turns out, I said to you years previously, which I couldn't remember at all, but I knew that.
Well, and that's what you were thinking, because I know you were writing Goblet at the time you said to me, and you knew how big it got, and the scale of it, and how it widened out. And there was just no way, and how complex the story was. So I think that's when we had to just make those decisions.
That was something that's difficult in a novel that's easier in a film. Because one of my hugest challenges in writing the Potter series was, you've got this boy who's 13 years old, who I know in 4 years' time has to take on the greatest dark wizard of all time. He needs a phenomenal amount of information before he can do that, and he's trapped in a boarding school. So the books became broader, if you like. I know they also became longer because I had somehow to move Harry outside that school and give him access to places and people he would not normally have come into contact with.
You were training him up.
I had to. So I had to take him to the Quidditch World Cup. I had to take him into the Ministry of Magic. This is what bulked up those books 4 and 5. He had to go and make some contacts and see some stuff that he couldn't plausibly do at school. Otherwise, you get the Power Rangers where the forces of evil attack only within about a square mile. Yeah.
No,
so
what's great about, it becomes, the world becomes very big and hairy. It expands.
And
it keeps
in
expanding.
the novel, that was a logistical problem. In the films, it was a bit of a gift because you got to do these fabulous locations and you could convey so much just visually. Just you, in 30 seconds of well-written script, you could say what it took me 3 pages to tell the reader. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it swings and roundabouts, and I know that we both have particularly tortuous memories of Goblet of Fire.
Yeah, I mean, it was never easy in a way, but because I think what's so special about the books is the detail. And so I always sort of endeavored to put the detail, and when I say detail, I mean I always felt the small magic was often more evocative than the large. But I think I remember when it got to Goblet of Fire, when Chris had ambitions to do all of the movies, he and I had talked at some length about Goblet of Fire being 2 movies.
The thing is with Goblet, the things that we lost were not necessary to the central plot. I know there are things in both Goblet and Phoenix. I'm going to defend all of the other books to the hilt, but in both Goblet and Phoenix, there was stuff to lose. I know it. The thing that I slightly regretted in Goblet was Spew, Hermione's mad campaign to liberate the house elves, who actually didn't want to be liberated, because I wanted to explore the fact that there was endemic injustice in that world, and it gave Hermione a dimension that she hadn't quite had hitherto. She was this quite shrill, I think very plausible, and I speak as one who was Hermione-ish, a bit of a goad, a swot. But this was about something else. This was quite altruistic. She was the first one to show political awareness. And Ron, who has always taken this completely for granted, that's how it is, they work for us, this says something about Ron, who's actually a very sympathetic character, but has always assumed that was just.
But it's great.
fine.
It's a great tension. It's a great tension between the two characters.
But where did it lead? Well, I suppose you could argue it led kind of in a convoluted way to Dobby's death.
Dobby is happy to be with his friend, Harry Potter.
It gives that some flavour
you do a lot
because
of that in the books. You set things up very early,
so
and they pay off 3 or 4 books later.
I wanted the reader, maybe the younger reader, to understand when Dobby chooses to die that way. Wow, he's from an oppressed minority, many of whom wouldn't have even chosen not to do their domestic servitude. So wow, what a great guy Dobby was. I feel, that was so. I suppose there was a lot of that in there. Goblet, talk about Barty Crouch.
Bartemius! Not trying to lure Potter into one of the Ministry's summer internships, are we? Last boy who went into the Department of Mysteries never came out.
That story, I must have spent 3 or 4 months trying to make dramatically comprehensible on screen. Every time I did it, everyone,
I am so sorry, Steve, because I handed you a problem that had tortured me. Because the scene at the Quidditch World Cup where you first see but don't see Barty Crouch and you don't know what's going on, and the dark mark appears for the first time, and it's incredibly obscure in every sense what's going on there, and trying to make that appear in any way coherent to the reader while obscuring as much as I needed to obscure was terrible. I had about 13 drafts of that chapter. Literally, I think I did have 13 drafts. And then, instead of saying, wow, this isn't, maybe this is too complex, I just said, there you go, you do it. So sorry about that.
And I think the thing I felt too is that it was really at the time, we had started to somewhat diverge, because we had to, a little bit from the text with Azkaban.
Yeah.
And what Goblet became was the moment where we said there is now really a movie tale and there is a book tale. The narratives are definitely reflective of one another, but they are slightly different. And so that's really what happened in Goblet.
Yeah.
It was...
I've got to say, I think it's remarkable you deviated as little as you did to the central, important driving plot. I think you barely deviated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That central strand of DNA is very recognisable in both book and film.
It's a movie, actually. I know a lot of people, it's their favorite. And I've had that over the years, that a lot of people come up and like that movie in particular. I think it's because much of what the sort of sensibility Mike brought to it. The interesting thing about Mike was he was English. So he sort of, without even trying, I think got the school thing. I think you feel that. I mean, you totally feel that in the movie.
Mike nailed the Yule Ball so perfectly.
I've been told that a few times.
I love that. That's one of the highlights of the series for me, is the ball scene. I couldn't improve on it in any way, shape or form. Visually it was perfection. The performances are stunning. It's pacey, because that could have brought all of the action to a halt, couldn't it? It could.
Absolutely.
Pace is such a problem with the films, I know, because in the book I frequently gather my characters together and they all sit down and have a conversation for 3 hours. You don't do that so much.
Well, you also do this thing which used to drive me truly insane, which is that a chapter would end, and then the next chapter would begin. Over the next 3 months, not much happened to Harry. I'm like, wait a minute, but now it's winter, or it's spring, and I'm like,
oh, do a montage, come on.
Well, that's right, because I hate that. I mean, I hate that thing of, you see the dissolve, and like suddenly,
exactly.
Here comes the spring flowers, and because directors look at you like you're mental. But
we haven't mentioned David Yates.
The two things are great about David, which is that most directors, if there's a conundrum, and on a Friday you're talking about it, he says, I'll think about it over the weekend. You think about it, let's talk on Monday. Well, most directors don't think about it at all over the weekend, and they expect you to figure it out. David Yates actually thinks about it over the weekend, and may ruin, his wife's weekend thinking about it. So you come to him, he says, I think I figured it out, and he has figured it out, and you're like, Jesus. This guy actually works, and also he's eerily good-natured, which I am convinced cloaks an absolute, massive hostility in some way. He's just so nice. I mean, I've never seen him not be nice.
Do you not think that may say more about you than about him,
sure it does.
Steve?
It does. But I mean, you have
He's
to admit,
such a nice guy. He must be evil.
Is he not just too nice? I mean, come on.
He is.
He's in the film business. It's not possible.
He's a wonderful guy.
He's really wonderful.
He's a really wonderful guy.
Yes. The one thing is, and I will say, it is the material. Again, I don't just say that. It has attracted not only the greatest acting talent, it's attracted remarkable directors. I do think, Alfonso had a great deal to do with that. I think when Alfonso agreed to do the third one, it was sort of like sending a message to the industry that he thought that it was worth his time, something he wanted to spend time on, and because they are 2.5 year enterprises, and we've been very lucky that way.
It's a big deal. I mean, when you look at what the director has to juggle on Potter, it's staggering. I can remember following Chris around, having a conversation, watching him running to test some pyrotechnic effect, running over here to check something going on.
And Chris
is
built for that.
Running back in to finesse something on the script. It just and the physical scale of everything he's expected to manage, plus a cast of at times 200. Insane.
But all of us on the movie said we're enthusiasts. I mean, we love the material. I don't know anybody who worked, in the primary group that didn't love the material. No one did it for like a job.
My God, I used to come away from Leavesden virtually every time, thinking, I had an idea on a train, and now 250 people are excitedly showing me latex goblins and remote control giant spiders, and they're just building a ministry of magic. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I felt the pride I felt just that group of people were assembled because I had an idea on a train in 1990. Can you imagine? It was phenomenal.
It's hard for even me to imagine that. I mean, it must be extraordinary.
Great people.
What's remarkable about it, like there's a moment in the last film which I think sort of embodies, like you were talking about, all these people basically living and breathing what you did, and there's where the dragon breaks through the roof of Gringotts. It pauses. It breathes in air through its nostrils because it's like a bouquet of roses, because it's been in this musty confinement for decades. And it's just a small moment.
That
but there are moments like that throughout the series.
So much to me, because in the first book, when I wrote, they say there are dragons guarding some of the high security vaults. And because I can't just write that and not think about it, this is back in 93 or something, I'm writing this. I'm thinking, God, you're keeping a dragon down there, that's a winged animal, that's not right. So I got my chance in 7 to do this enormous set piece scene in the book where they free, and it's sort of bringing to light, literally but figuratively, all the injustices in that world. That's what they're doing. Harry enters this beautiful world glittering with jewels and gold and Gringotts, but it hides ugly stuff. It was a metaphor for me. But when I wrote that scene, I'd always sort of kept my powder dry through the series and the books. I'd never gone for the massive effect, because I knew that in 7 there were a few things I wanted to do. Obviously there was going to be the big battle at Hogwarts, but that dragon bursting out of Gringotts was major, as was the fiend fire in the Room of Requirements.
Yeah.
So where suddenly you really show what magic can do.
No,
you
felt
really
it
go for it. You blast apart all the rules and the regulations. It was such fun to do. So it wasn't directly influenced by the film, but after I'd written the dragon scene, which meant a lot to me for the reasons I've just mentioned, I then thought, God, that's going to look great.
Well, no, and it was like, it was one of the, actually, it's funny you mentioned that scene, because I thought that it was going to be one of the more challenging ones, specifically with, the Gimino curse.
They've added the Gimino curse. Everything you touch will multiply.
And I thought, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Because I really had concerns about that, and actually, it's brilliant. And
it is.
And it's
one of my favourite parts of the movie.
Yeah, but again, you have that moment where Hermione says,
That's barbaric.
But I think, again, it's about this world is cruel. And
it's as cruel as our world.
Oh, yeah.
It's a mirror image.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just as they can solve things that we can't solve, so they can create problems that we don't have. And that's always been the problem for Harry, that he enters this world and believes it will be an escape. And it's not. Human nature is human nature, whether or not you can use a wand.
Yeah.
So we've talked about cutting, but speaking about something that I never wrote, but I thought was perfect, and I loved, you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, the dance.
The dance.
Yeah, I mean, the dance was funny because I had the idea for it while I was writing Half-Blood Prince. I was driving home one day after working on Half-Blood Prince, and I had this idea, because a song came on the radio, that I thought, wow, what if the radio becomes identified with Ron in Hallows. It's his way of trying to check on his family.
Mm-hmm.
And what if when he leaves, the radio's left behind becomes a surrogate for him, and Harry trying to emotionally reel Hermione back in? What if he stumbles on a Muggle station and they both grew up as Muggles, and he plays the song? But it's one thing to write that, and to write the levels of it, which I'm not going to lay out, but they're very complicated. But it's nothing to play it. And one of the things I'll never forget the first time I saw it, when I saw it in New York, you could hear a pin drop because people were scared about where it was going. And that was its intention. And that's really Emma and Dan. They communicated, and then they
But the
all the levels.
idea was yours, and I loved it so much. And you and I, who are violently allergic to sentimentality in any form.
Yeah.
And what I loved about that scene was everything you've just said. It's just on the edge of where is this going to topple over into? Oh my God, they're not going to kiss, are they? Are they? Are they? Are they? So I'm feeling incredibly uncomfortable, borderline embarrassed, very, very moved. It's just perfect. I loved it as an idea. And you and I had a conversation where, by email, actually. I always assume we actually had the conversation, but I'm sure it was email.
I always hear your voice in my head.
But we were talking. And you said that when they were in the tent together, you thought something was going to happen.
Yeah, I did.
As
When
you
I read
read
the
the
book.
novel. And I, as I was writing it, felt a real pull between them.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
That really, in a sense, gave me the license to do the scene.
Yeah.
Because I knew that emotionally it was true
completely
then.
true to the character. Why wouldn't it happen? You're alone. You might die any day.
Yeah.
The thing that's been holding you together, I mean, Ron has always been the necessary component there, and he's gone.
He's gone.
And why wouldn't you look for comfort? I think it's more likely than not, except that then Ron's got to come back and they've got to look him in the eye, and I didn't need that emotional package on top of everything else that was
and I think it's a
on.
measure of each Harry and Hermione's love for Ron that it doesn't happen. And I think also that it's one of those things that had something happen, it would have been very weird the next day.
Very weird the next day in a two-man tent.
Yeah.
And nowhere to run.
Yeah. So, I mean, but I think what was interesting about it was that I thought I would get real pushback on that scene.
Well, I would have defended you to the hilt on that because I thought it was perfect.
But it was embraced. And no more than it was most enthusiastically embraced by Emma and Dan. Yeah. And so that told me that it worked, and it was because it was emotionally true to what you had written. And I think that if you follow it thematically and you're true to the characters, it's hard to go wrong if you're true to them, even if, say, the incident is not identical to what was in the book. But I want to ask you, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but did in any way, when the movies started to appear, did it affect your writing at all? I mean, was there in any way, were you able to kind of put blinders on and not
put blinders on? I think I had such deep roots with the characters by then. 99, I was 9 years in by the time we met.
Right.
So nothing was going to shake that. The only person who ever, well, actually you did, because I don't know whether you'll remember this, but I was writing Goblet, and I emailed you.
We were emailing a lot during that period. Because you had a slight crisis.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was supposed to say that, but you.
No, I'm just smiling at slight.
Because you're at a Hard Street date.
Yeah, that wasn't such a good time for me. I was having a big crisis, and I remember emailing you and saying, "I've got all this backstory on Hagrid. It's too much. It's going to be such a long book. Do I put it in?"
I remember this.
And you said, "Put it in."
Yeah.
So I put it in.
Can't be enough Hagrid.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Can never be too much
you
Hagrid.
can't tell me too much about Hagrid. Put it in. So I put it in. You had a very direct effect there. But with the only exception, actor-wise, to my sort of didn't intrude rule was Ivana Lynch, who plays Luna, and I hear her voice when I write Luna.
Hello, Harry.
Luna, how do you know where I was?
We're experts. Your head's full of them.
And I even put painted pictures on the ceiling of the literary Luna's room in tribute to Ivana, because she, the actress herself, is so creative, she's so talented, and I know her well. Yeah, that influenced the real. So she influenced the real Luna.
But you had created the character before you ever had.
Oh yeah, before I ever met
Because she contacted you, and she says, "I'm like this person." And you probably thought initially.
Well,
of course.
she was a sweetheart. The strangest thing. This girl's writing to me saying, "I am Luna," And she was writing these lovely letters, and I was writing back saying, well, you certainly seem to be a lot like Luna, you know. Didn't know anything about her. Then they have this open call. They audition. How many was it? I mean, 10,000 girls.
Literally, I think it was something like 12,000 people.
It was extraordinary. And then I walk into my office, and my PA says, they found Luna. I was thank Christ, that was getting down to the wire. And she said, her name's Ivana Lynch. And I nearly
You've been corresponding with her.
Out. I said, Ivana Lynch, that's that girl who's been writing to me. So, yeah. So she was spot on, completely spot on.
But that's the kind of thing that happened in Potter a bit, I think.
Yeah, it did. It all got a little weird at times, didn't it?
But is there anybody else in there, in the books, that you feel where you yourself most comes into evidence?
Do you? The great truism is that you are every one of your characters, isn't it? And I think that's true of me, and that doesn't make me, multiple personalities. Just you have to feel every single character. So that Voldemort
side is a little scary.
Yeah, I hide that well, but I think about death and dying every single day of my life. And I've never written anything, including the stuff post-Potter, that hasn't been hugely about death. So I think all the themes are things that just preoccupy me as a human being.
Did you always think about death and dying even when you were very, very young?
Do you know what? I think even before my mother died, when I was relatively young, I was in my mid-20s, I think I did think about it quite a lot. I can remember, even as a child, thinking about it a lot. So I was born that way, apparently. And what about you?
No, I mean, someone said I came out of the womb melancholy.
I like that about you.
They said, that I looked at them like I expected this once when I got slapped in the ass. I figured that was coming. I think it's what you said. I mean, I identify with all the characters, and I think it's why I so loved your books.
You're unusually good at writing women. Yeah, I would like that on. You are unusually good, very unusually good, because most heterosexual male writers, in my experience, are not terribly good at writing women.
I mean, I think it helps to like women, and
they're not very good at writing women as people.
Yeah,
they're awfully good at writing women as manifestations of their own desire.
Well, I think there's a dearth of that in Hollywood, and has been for years, and continues, which is that humor is an absence often, even among our best directors, and compelling female characters. And I think I had fairly compelling women in my life. I think I was lucky. My mother was, a powerful presence in my life, and I knew her value. And she's the one who introduced me to books. She was complicated, rich character, though very gentle. And so I like writing women. It's probably my favorite thing. I mean, I really love writing women. I love writing Luna. I love writing.
You do love Luna.
Oh, I love Luna. I mean, I love writing for her just because I love that. It's the most brilliant sensibility to me, which is just that.
Come, Daddy. Harry doesn't want to talk to us right now. He's just too polite to say so.
And I just know, it's just who she is. She says something that's sort of rude, but so nicely. You're like, okay, how can you not respond to that?
Yeah.
How is it for you the first time you see the movies? Is it strange? Is it?
I feel incredibly apprehensive always. I think 90% of feeling apprehensive is because I have to go back and look at my work as well. Can you understand that?
So, and you really are going back because you're so far beyond. You were always so far beyond where we were.
That's weird. I always trust you guys. I'm always sure you've done a good job. But I don't know, huge excitement, but always laced with apprehension. And then I have to say the last two particularly, I mean all of them, I've walked out very happy, but the last two I was ecstatic. I've been ecstatic.
Did it ever become a burden in a way, the whole thing? I mean, did you ever long for sort of being back in the coffee shop?
I am. No.
Yeah, but you can't sit in a coffee shop anymore.
No, I can't. Really.
No, but I mean anybody who creates longs for, I think, an audience and what's happened to you. I think they're lying if they don't.
There's that two-way pull as a writer, isn't there? You want people to read it, but I think it's almost a necessary condition of writing that you have a degree of anonymity. Yeah. So that has been strange.
I mean, because I know
it's the reason I haven't published. It's been a very deliberate decision. It's not there's nothing to publish. It's just I want to let some things settle before I take any decisions on doing that. And that's been great. So in the most important sense, I've got it back now, because only I know the characters that I'm working with now. It's my private kingdom again. I reclaim that. But I'm never going to lament the fact that so many people got to go to Hogwarts, you know. It was wonderful. I see it as a liberating thing more than I see it as a confining thing. I mean, I'm constantly told, well, you must be such a burden. You'll never write anything that popular again. No, of course I won't. Of course I won't. I'm there way ahead of you. I knew that back in Azkaban. Of course I won't. But I see that as liberating. Harry Potter set me free. You know, I can afford in every sense, including the material, now to do what the hell I like. And if the next book I write pleases 3 people, so be it. That's okay.
No, it's what a writer really wants to be able to do what they do. And I was thinking,
I'm a very lucky person.
But the magnitude of it, I was saying to someone, I'm kind of desperately hoping that you're writing something that I can adapt, just because it has been really remarkable, and that rarely happens. And it was a remarkable group of people.
Yeah,
I have to say. God, I mean, what are the odds of it happening? I mean, that's the thing.
I know, it's so true. What were the odds?
Fine day, Sunday.
No damn letters today. Something came whizzing down the chimney as he spoke and caught him sharply on the back of the head. Next moment, 30 or 40 letters came pelting out of the fireplace like bullets. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry leapt into the air trying to catch one.
Ron, I should tell you. Most muggles aren't accustomed to seeing a flying car. Right.
Ron pressed a tiny silver button on the dashboard. The car around them vanished, and so did they. Harry could feel the seat vibrating beneath him.
3 turns should do it, I think.
Ready, she said, breathlessly. What are we doing? Harry said, completely lost. Hermione turned the hourglass over 3 times. The dark ward dissolved. Harry had the sensation that he was flying very fast, backwards. A blur of colours and shapes rushed past him. His ears were pounding. He tried to yell but couldn't hear his own voice. And then he felt solid ground beneath his feet, and everything came into focus again.